Hi, everybody. Good evening. So glad to have you all here. So, if you guys have any questions, any follow ups on our previous session, let's address that very quickly and then we can move forward with today's session. Please feel free to reach out in the comment section if you have any queries, any doubts that were left unattended in the last session yesterday. No doubts. That's a that's a very nice thing, but you should definitely have doubts. It's great that you don't. How to submit our assignment? You need to go to Let's Upgrade website or check out the link in the description. There is a section to check and update your assignments and mark your attendance. Can you tell the difference between auto layout and a component? Yes, we will address that in today's session. What's the difference between sign in and log in? It's just a difference of terminology. Sign in and login are not different from each other. Sign up and sign in are different. Sign up means that the user is onboarding on the platform for the first time. And signing in, that means they've already registered, they are an existing user. Any other doubts? Or should we proceed with today's session? All right, great. Let me just present my screen. Okay, I hope this is visible to everybody. So what we're gonna start with today is we're gonna go to this website. If you are using your laptop to go through this session, it would be great if you can just quickly type in user USERINYER face FACE user interface, but instead of the T there is a Y. So what we're gonna do for this particular web page is we are gonna go through this challenge. As it mentions here, to play the game, simply fill in the form as fast and as accurate possible. Okay. So can you quickly tell me what my primary actionable is in this page? What am I supposed to click on this page? Can anybody quickly tell me in the comment section? Click no. But is it the right terminology? I want to start this challenge. Okay. I click on no. Nothing happens. I need to click here in order to get to this level. This site uses cookies. Is that a problem for you? Not really, no. Yes, it's a problem for me. Okay. So what are the problems in this particular UI? I'm just gonna let this screen be here for a second and you guys need to tell me what the problems are in this page. Go through it section by section and start writing down what the problems are. I'm gonna head to the comment section now. Okay, guys, what is the problem in this page? So basically, this page is trying to tell me what are the worst possible ways to kind of create an interface. Whenever we are signing up on any particular portal or website or a dashboard, we're supposed to enter our email first and then add a domain name or just the entire email address. There is no usual segregation as shown here. And then we are supposed to not choose a password, we're supposed to set a password. Then the checkbox for terms and conditions is not usually checked. It is not legal to do this. It is not ethical as well. And the terminology usually says, I accept the terms and conditions. And there is no timer. And as you can see, this is a button to expand the module, not close it. In order to close it, I need to click on the copyright icon, LOSE. So in order to go next, as I've been taught over the years by the practices that create interfaces and experiences, the anchor button, the primary button, should be more highlighted, whereas the next button is supposed to be that button in this case, but it is not highlighted. Cancel button is. So if I try to choose a password, I will test 123. And when I'm trying to type in the password, this text should automatically have been deleted. It wasn't. And I again try to add my email, twinkle@gmail.com. And I click on next. Now it's telling me that there is a problem with my password. And these hints have been mentioned in this below section. Your password requires at least 10 characters, at least one capital letter, one numeral, one letter of your email, one Cyrillic character. So all of these inputs should have been identified or shown in a better way. Don't you guys agree? Right, everything. Yep. Exactly. It is not, the UI is good ish, but at the same time, the usability has been created purposefully so bad to kind of tell us that these are the things that we should not do. And even for the indicators of my progress, that these many steps I need to complete in order to kind of fill out the entire form, and this is the step that I'm in, then why is this number being highlighted step by step? It should only be highlighted when I'm on that particular step. So apart from this, if I try to enter something and then I would ideally want to submit it, this is where I'm assuming that the submit button would be, but it's not. I click on this and it sends it to the bottom. It does not submit it, it just hides very slowly, hides the model, right? So I think it is a very good challenge to go through. User INYERFACE. I will add this link to the document that I'll be sharing with you guys. Go through it, see how fast you can reach the step 4, or if you can at all, because yeah, it takes a while. Yeah, all right. Yep, it is wrong because they are trying to make a point that everything about this interface is wrong. These are the things that we need to avoid. Okay. Right. Let's proceed with our today's session. As mentioned in the last session, I would want all of you guys to kind of go through a few principles that we need to follow, at least we need to keep in the back of our minds when we are designing something. For example, laws of, so all of these 6 principles are Gestalt principles. What do they mean? How can we kind of use them in our day-to-day lives? Let's get into that. When we talk about the law of common region, what does it mean? Elements tend to be perceived into groups if they are sharing an area with a clearly defined boundary. So if you check this image out, you can see that these elements, they look like that they belong together. These boxes with a darker shade of green, because they have been enclosed in a confined space, in a box, it looks like they belong together. So similarly, whenever we are trying to create a design or components, even if we are trying to create structures, even if the gap between them could be similar, but at the same time, because they have been confined in this space, it looks like they belong together. If I remove this margin and I add this color to it, nobody can vouch for whether the fact that these elements, if I get the spacing just right, we have 10 between this and this box and this and this box. The spacing is same, but because they have been put in a container, I now feel that these categories, these boxes, they kind of belong together, right? After that, we talk about the law of proximity. Objects that are near or proximate to each other tend to be grouped together. So, the same principle, but with a slightly different approach. If I talk about these boxes, again, the properties are the same. They are all black boxes. But because they've been put so closely together, it looks like that they belong together without any confinement, without any boxes to kind of, segregate them. I can just keep this box over here with the same color, but my eye is trained to perceive that these 6 boxes belong together, these 2 boxes belong separately to each other, right? Okay, let's move on to the law of pragnance. People will perceive and interpret ambiguous or complex images as the simplest form possible because it is the interpretation that requires the less cognitive effort of us. Now, what does this mean? There were a lot of heavy words in this particular law. So, when we look at this image, we are trying to create a sense out of it. We are trying to understand what does this shape consist of. There is a very clear hexagon that is forming. There are a few triangles if I want to simplify it, right? And then there is a couple of cones that are being formed. This is how my mind is kind of trained to simplify all of this, right? This is one approach in order to kind of simplify what we've been seeing, but how my mind perceived it was in the form of triangles. It could have been 2 parallel bars and one divider in the center of it, right? But even if we create something complex for the user, we need to understand that at the end, how they're going to perceive it as a very simple box, because that is how we've been trained. And this is why we need to, even if we do end up creating a complex system, we need to understand that the end user will always be trying to simplify it so that they can relate to it better. Law of similarity. What does this mean? The human eye tends to perceive similar elements in a design as a complete picture, shape, or group, even if those elements are separated. I think I don't need to recreate anything over here. We just kind of clearly know that the circles that are painted white look like that they belong together, they are highlighted. Not just highlighted, but it is very easy for us to kind of determine that what sections, what elements kind of go together and what don't in this particular group, right? Then we come to the law of uniform connectedness. Elements that are visually connected are perceived to be more related than elements with no connection. So again, as mentioned, I can kind of understand that these elements, because these dots are connected to each other. For example, let me just recreate this so we can have a better understanding of what this means. So these laws are not just for UI UX, they are also here to help us kind of navigate any sort of design that we approach, be it architecture, be it interior, apparel, graphics. It does not really matter what sort of design we talk about, but these laws are universal. They have been in place for more than hundreds of years, and they are here for a reason because they have been kind of guiding the designers. So let's come back to the law of uniform connectedness. If I did not have these circles, these dots would just be scattered. But because now they are connected, I can kind of make sense of what is happening in this, right? So, how do we interpret this in terms of UI UX design? Let me simplify that. So, whenever I am trying to create, let's start with the wireframe. I have my logo over here. Then I have my one line text. Then I have my description over here. This is my body text. This is my title. And this is my primary action button. I want to keep it centrally aligned. Okay. So this kind of makes sense. This is a title, this is a body description, a logo, and a call to action button, right? But what if all of this was not, the boundaries for this were not clearly defined? What if it looked something like this? I would not really be able to make sense of it. Are these two connected? I'm not really sure. Is this relevant to this? I'm not really sure. What if this was right next to, what if the button was right next to the logo? What if the title was under it? All of this does not really make sense. This is why we need to kind of follow these principles whenever we are creating an interface, especially an interface. I hope this is clear. I'm gonna head to the comment section and see. Okay, does anybody have any questions with regards to the Gestalt principles? Okay, guys, if you can confirm. Okay, great. What's the use of this principle? Okay, again, as I mentioned in this layout right now, that based on all of these laws that we are going to be learning today, you derive how all of this fits into the design that you are making. We will get to the application part of it as well. Let's move on to the laws of UX. Aesthetic usability effect. Users often perceive aesthetically pleasing designs as design that's more usable. What does this mean? Let's try to understand it with an example. Apple. Apple's products look sleek and attractive and deliver an exceptional user experience. So, this is, in layman's term, judging a book by its cover. If the cover of the book is enticing, if it's engaging, if it makes you wonder what's inside the book, it's doing its job. That means you're already sold on the first level that there might be something that is worth reading in this book. Is why creating an interface that appeals to the end user is very important. Usability comes second. You would not want to purchase a car that looks worn out when you have the budget for it. You would want to get something that looks flashy or is nice to look at. And then you come on to the usability aspect. What is the horsepower or whatever mumbo jumbo that we need to think of when we purchase a motor vehicle? But the look of it is what appeals to us first. That is what meets the eye at the first level, right? Then we come to Fitts law. The time to acquire a target is a function of the distance to and size of the target. Okay, what does this mean? This means that the time it takes for me to create or make an action on the interface directly depends on the placement of it. So, for example, if we try to understand it with design, so I created two layouts for it. What do you think the primary actionable is in both the cards? It's the blue button. But in the second card, I have made sure to kind of follow the structure that I have an image, I have a description, and after that, I have a CTA. Why? Because one, it is easier to reach. And two, in this particular design, another law applies, which is, oh, I'm sorry, I think I did not include that law in this. But basically, it kind of follows the structure that I need to show the user all the information and then ask them to take an action. I need to be able to sell the user on the information that I'm showing them. Think of yourself as a salesperson. You need to convince the user that whatever information you are showing, whatever information that you are selling about a product, it has to be concrete, it has to be appealing to the user. Only then they would want to get on board or make an action, whether it's creating a purchase or getting onboarded on that platform. Because even a tiny action as onboarding or signing up on any platform, the user will be sharing their personal information. They would be sharing their name, their mobile number, or their email ID. All of this information in today's time and age is very crucial. There are so many debates happening around data security. So that plays a very massive role in kind of convincing the user that this is the primary information based on which they need to make an action. And it is our job as designers to kind of make sure that all of this information is being passed on to the user. At the same time, the accessibility of the CTA, of the call to action, is easy to locate and easy to access. Let's move on to another law, which is Hicks' law. The time it takes to make a decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. Okay. This kind of relates to one other law that we have, which is Miller's law. But let's focus on this first. What does this law mean? What is it saying? So when we bombard the user with a lot of information, it kind of becomes a little difficult for them to kind of navigate their way about it. If I had a primary actionable over here which said submit, and then I had so many colors, so many tags that the user needed to select from, it would be a little difficult. For example, if we go onto Spotify and create our account and it asks us what the artists are, the motivation there is different. We are choosing to get on board, and the incentive is that we get to kind of listen to our favorite artists over there. But what if the assignment was a little boring? What if it wasn't as enticing as what Spotify does or Pinterest does? It gives you a lot of information that you need to select from. What if it was as boring as maybe selecting a course, or maybe, kind of creating a very long form for an organization or something? So you would not want to go through all of this. And how do we simplify that? We simplify all of this by creating groupings in the category itself. We have an option for music, we have an option for songs. Why not just simplify both of this, merge into music? We have writing, we have creative writing. Why not just merge it into writing? There are mandalas, there are art and painting. All of this can be summarized in art. Same for technology and coding and IT and AI. All of this can be formed under technology. Another thing that we need to note over here is that because we've used so many colors, it is difficult for the user to understand what have they selected. To simplify that, only the selected button should have a separate color so that it kind of sets it apart from the rest of the tags that there are, rest of the information. Now we move on to Jacob's law. User spends most of their time on other sites. This means that the users prefer your site to work the same way as all the other sites they already know. Go through this uh, design or wireframe that I have created and tell me if something feels out of place for you in this particular wireframe. CTA is call to action. Thank you, Sneha. Guys, does anything seem out of place in this particular section for you? Searching, yes. Right. So the search button, as its universal approach, as what we've seen in thousands of portals, search is supposed to be on the top, because that is something that we put over here to kind of get the user to navigate through the portal in an easier way. What if they can't really locate something on the site navigation or maybe in the data that we've shown? It is always preferred to follow some standards that the industry has set for us, that some of the giants have set for us, that search, profiles, all of this information should be accessed on the top navigation. We've created them and we've been following them in such a way because it kind of increases the chances that we might not be able to show the user in the first attempt, in the first scroll. Okay, let's move on to Miller's Law. I think this everybody will agree with me on. The average person can only keep 7 plus or minus 2 items in their working memory. Now, the best example for all of this is how Photoshop works and how they have kind of grouped the information in the form of categories with respect to their features and what the feature does, so that we don't have to memorize. Just imagine if Photoshop put all of the features that they had in the side panel. We would never be able to locate anything on time, and it would take us twice as much as it does right now to work on anything. Similarly, I think this kind of also gives us the information that what amount of data do we show the user in at a moment so that the user does not feel overwhelmed. Because at the end of the day, the designs we are making, the products that we are creating, it is all about the end user. We need to empathize with them, we need to understand their pain points, and we need to serve them right. Are there any questions regarding these? Yes, I'll share the Figma link for this file. I'll add it to the Notion link that you can see at the bottom. I'll add it over there. Great. So apart from this, I have created a repository for a couple of files. For example, a lot of you were asking for Figma shortcuts and what are the shortcuts that I'm using. And because I'm using Mac, so the shortcuts might be different for Windows. So what I did was I just kind of researched a bit on what repository there is to kind of see what type of shortcuts there are. So I have also added this link in the file, and you can just go through all of this. So very simple shortcuts like Control C, Control X, Command V, all of this, exporting, masking, bringing the layer forward, tidying up, adding auto layout, creating a component, adding a comment. All of this is added in this link. It would be great if you can try to incorporate at least 5 new shortcuts every day. If you are using Figma, it is great that you have already moved on to the latest technology, latest tool that there is to design. But it's not the last stop. We need to be efficient in what we are designing. We need to be able to understand that how can I increase my efficiency. Right, and of course, through shortcuts, that is possible. Then we talk about uh, this book that I would definitely suggest that everybody reads, The Design of Everyday Things. Let me just quickly take you through the cover of this book. I hope you guys have seen this book. If not, it is a must read. Can you tell me why Don Norman chose this cover? And why is it so funny? So the other law that I've missed, there are so many laws, but it is difficult to kind of convey all the laws and kind of make you understand in one session. It does take quite a long time to kind of understand and implement those laws in our day-to-day lives and the designs that we are making. So I just wrote down a couple of laws that kind of are crucial. But yeah, I think when you start your own research on this, so it will be definitely a good research point for you. So yeah, Don Norman was the father of UX. He is the father of UX, definitely. He is the designer who kind of made us be aware of creating designs that are not user centric but are human centric. It's totally unusable and pretty noticeable. Yep, yep, yep. Great. Yep. So it is all about usability. How are we creating the products that are usable or not? For example, if we talk about this, I'm not sure if it will show me that result. That UX mug. Yep, this is the one. So, how badly is this designed? I mean, why? What was the point? How were they not even thinking about it? Another bad UX example. So many of them, actually. The uncomfortable mug, the uncomfortable champagne glasses, engagement mugs, thick forks, just examples of terrible, terrible UX. So, UX does not really limit to anything digital, it can be anything and everything that we see around us. For example, I think it is my personal bias, but I'm not sure if anybody else can relate to it. I just hate doorknobs. I would much rather use a door handle instead of a knob. Sometimes it's like a little tricky, it slips, and I don't know why people still use it. But again, somebody came up with an idea of creating door handles, and that's just genius. The littlest things. Right. Okay. Great. Let's move on to another topic that I wanted to highlight, which is UX writing. So, if you feel that you are good in communicating in a certain language, it could be anything. And because, of course, we have so many tools to help us communicate better, it is very important for a UI UX designer to also be involved not just in user experience, but also user experience writing. Now, what does that mean? User experience writing is trying to assist the user with not just the designs that we are making, but also the language that we are using, the content that we are using in order to help the user navigate through that particular section. For example, if I want to kind of give you a brief about aesthetic usability effect, and I chose to write all of this over here. I wrote this, or whoever did kind of wanted to attract a generic user, an everyday user. But what if my target audience for this particular law was maybe it was somebody who was at the age of 12 and was maybe not so good in reading English. What if they preferred something in Hindi? Would this language still be applicable for them, for that student? No. We would need to understand how a 12-year-old thinks. We would need to understand how to translate all of this in Hindi, in their preferred language. We would need to kind of make sure that this message does not lose its essence. Now, you must be wondering that is the job of a content writer. It's true, but at the end of the day, in order to become a multidisciplinary designer, let's not try to rely on the other roles that are around us. Why is it their job? Why can't we take the ownership to kind of create a system in which every pop up, every error message, every toast message that we are showing the user is defined by us? Because at the end of the day, we are kind of creating the flow for the user. For example, if I am on Amazon and I need to maybe purchase a shampoo, how will I go about it? The designer who created the UI, I'm sure it was a bunch of designers, it was a team, but they kind of defined the flow that when the user lands on Amazon's website, there should be a clear navigation for them to go through categories. They go through categories. From there, I see my listing of all the products that there are. They made sure that I have the filters with filters clearly written on top. They made sure that there is an apply filter button at the bottom. There is a button that kind of helps me set my range of the price. And based on that, I see my results. When I'm clicking on the results, I see that there is a detail page Over here, I have my image, I have my title, I have my price clearly defined. All of this is done. When I click on the add to cart button, I am shown a message that it has been the primary button which says add to cart is now changed to go to cart. All of this is being defined by the designers. This a task as simple as purchasing a shampoo involves so many different layers. It is not easy to create a product. It is definitely not easy. But it is our job to break it down into the simplest steps and follow through. At what page, what information is required, how do we define it, how do we make sure that this is accessible, this is visible, how do we make sure that if the user wants to go to maybe some sort of surf category, they should be able to. There is always a kebab menu on top to kind of redirect the user to another category. So it is not just our job to kind of create pretty interfaces. It is very important to one, understand the UX, and two, the message that we are sending to the user. All of this is very important. It is not just creating a couple of boxes. Is it usable? There is not enough information. This is just a wireframe, but for now, but imagine if there was a very nice mountain picture, there was a title about like maybe this location. It's Switzerland. I have some information that, this is what Switzerland is all about. Would I want to book a tour for Switzerland based on this information? No. I need the user because they're spending their money on this. I need them to know so much more, their travel expenses, the taxes that they will be paying, is there any restriction? So, in order to get the user to create an action, to achieve a goal on this, we need to think of what they are doing, what is it all about. And after that comes the UX writing. We need to guide the user, we need to understand what messaging they respond to more. Again, the messaging can change from region to region, but again, it is up to us to kind of create a global system which resonates with the majority of the users. I hope this makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about this? Any questions, guys? Great. Can you explain how and why we use the icon which is besides the hand icon on top? Okay. Okay. Do you mean this? So this button basically kind of gives me access to all the components that I have in this particular file. I can search them. I can check my plugins that I have installed with my account and some widgets, but I think we will not be covering widgets and plugins. I think I can give you some brief about the plugins that I personally use. One is color contrast. We covered this in the last session. Color contrast basically gives me an idea of what my readability for any set of colors is. For example, if I check the color contrast for this, it passes my WCAG check for both normal text and large text. But if I was to kind of decrease or go to a little darker shade and I try to check it again, it would give me a different result. I'm not sure why it's still not changing it, but let me just kind of create it separately. So for example, if I check it again, it does not pass. I would need to change something in order to kind of make sure that the readability for this contrast is working or not. Apart from this, Lottie Files is a godsend when it comes to creating interactive designs or adding some sort of interactive elements. Basically, what it does is that it gives you the CSS code. I can just directly insert it as a GIF. The free account lets me use the medium size, which is good enough for presentation because the screen size that we use in order to create designs is usually 375, give or take. And then these, so if I put this in a playback, this GIF is very easy to use and of course looks so much better. It kind of elevates the design. So Lottie Files is one plugin that you should definitely use when we kind of create our designs, be it a application or a dashboard or anything. Apart from this, when we are working on a product that we need some avatars for, so instead of going back and forth to sites like FreePic or Unsplash or Pixels, it is just very easy to go to this plugin and kind of like select the audience that we want the user to see over here. So yeah, that is a brief about plugins. You can just go to your managed plugin section and kind of see what the community is working around. All of this can also be accessed through your explore community section. Guys, I cannot focus on this enough. You definitely need to every day kind of go through this section, kind of understand what people are creating, interact with the design community that is, if not physically around you, then virtually. Everything that is created in the Figma community is just pure gold. People are working on design systems, they are creating something new every day. It is very, very easy for you to access all these designs. I understand that there are portals like Dribble and Behance and Pinterest, but in order to kind of get the raw files of all of this, to kind of have a hands-on access to what font size they've been using, what they're using, some border radius. If I need to check, they were using inner shadow. I mean, this looks cool. I'm not sure who the designer is, Daniel Amani, but this design just looks good. So again, based on the law that we discussed, if something looks good, we kind of assume that it works smoothly as well. So again, the more you design, the more practice you get, the finer your work will be. So yeah. Any questions? For color theory, why don't we never use pure white or pure black? Do we need to learn specific hex codes of colors when making the design as we go? So, I mean, it is all about the contrast, and there is no, it is advised to not use pure black or pure white, but there is no set rule against it. Again, I mentioned this yesterday that design is highly subjective. The color choice that you make for your product or whatever design, be it a graphics, poster, social media, Instagram, or even a brochure or a packaging design or an application website, anything. What if the color that you have selected does not sit right with the next person? Does that mean that your color choice is wrong? It may be, it may not be. There is no set rule to it. It is all subjective, is why we have some tools in place like color contrast to kind of validate, is it the combination of these two colors that is not sitting right, or is it what the problem is basically with the color combination that you've created. There are so many options. For example, there is a site called Coolers. What it does is that it generates palettes for you. I press spacebar and it starts giving me options of the colors that go together. If you feel like that the color choices that you've made are not right, the options that there are in order to kind of go and get a better understanding of what colors should you use, go to any particular design site, be it Dribble or Behance, and just see what people are doing. See what the colors that they've been using. They're using a slightly pastel shade of the colors that they have: yellow, pink, purple. They could have used pop. It might have looked good. I'm not sure. But they went with this. They followed this pastel shade in all the colors that they've been using, and it looks good. If you can see in the very fine details, they gave a border radius, but they gave a gradient in that border radius, so it looks like the card is shining on the top. This is something different. This is something that you may not have thought of. But again, the more inspirations that you go through, the easier it will be to kind of understand what people are doing and what the industry standard is, and that is what you need to match. Of course, it might take some time. It definitely might, but again, it is always good to kind of understand what people are doing. Okay. Uh, right. Uh, got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. Now, this one other concern that I wanted to address that a lot of people were uh, thinking of and commenting in the live chat is AI going to replace our job as UI UX designers? So, how many of you think that AI is going to replace our job as UI UX designers? I would need some consensus on this. Guys, please reply in the chat. Do you think that AI is going to replace our jobs? Are we just wasting our time being designers or starting to learn how to be designers? Okay. Why do you think that AI cannot replace our design skills? It needs human intervention. Okay. AI will replace UI but not UX. Okay. It can't implement the perfect designs like humans. Okay. The thinking of humans. Okay. I think most of you are going in the right direction. While it's true that AI has made significant advancements in the field of design, it's unlikely that it will completely replace human creativity. Yes, yes, I agree with this 100% because AI is being fed on the data that we have created over the years. And of course, it is learning, it is consistently learning, but at the same time, it is predictable, right? It can only derive conclusions based on the data that it is being fed. Unlike humans, we want to think outside the box. That is, in every job interview that we give, they ask us, are you able to think outside the box? Can we do that? I think yes. But can we just rely on AI altogether to do that for us? I don't think we are there yet. I don't think technology is there yet. But how do we deal with the uprising of AI in the field of design, especially? It is very, very tricky to navigate in today's climate when AI is making an impact in the world, definitely. When we talk about landing jobs in the sector of design, almost every company that is hiring right now in their job description, they have mentioned that the employee or the candidate must be aware of AI tools. But how do we kind of merge that gap between being a designer and being aware of the AI tools that there are? How do we merge our two globes to kind of create and create a design that at the end of the day assists the user? So I tried a couple of plugins and tools quite a while ago. I think it was 3-4 months ago. I wanted to create a wireframe very quickly. I did not have, I think, more than 30 minutes to create that wireframe. And I kind of thought that maybe I'll just try a couple of tools and see what I come up with, what they come up with. And I wanted to create something for an e-commerce website. And basically what it did was it gave me a very generic layout for an e-commerce website. Then the next prompt I gave it was a little specific, that my main agenda to create this e-commerce website wireframe is to increase user conversion. And it could not really comprehend what I was trying to say. Basically I wanted it to perform an action which was beyond its capability, because it was just fed to create an e-commerce wireframe. It was not really fed the data of doing that particular research for the prompt that I had asked it. So it kind of regenerated the same old layout for me again. And I was looking at this one other video of a UX designer. They kind of gave the same prompt to Midjourney, and what they ended up with were 4 images that were stacked like this. And this was the wireframe that Midjourney came up with. Now, this was not really a wireframe. There was no placement. There was no clear segregation of what the title is supposed to be, where the image is supposed to be, even the call to action. It was not supposed to be placed in the middle, something like this. But that is what the end result was. So, again, to reiterate, AI is not quite there yet to replace designers, but at the same time, it will add on to our skill set if we kind of find a way to coexist and exploit the resources that AI has to give. For example, ChatGPT and Gemini. These are mainly used for content creation, but and again these are mainly used by content writers or people who are in marketing and want to maybe get a catchy maybe a description or a tagline or something. So that is what I think general consensus is when it comes to GPT and Gemini. But how I have been using it in my own research, in my own design process, is that I create prompts that kind of give me insights on what the user is thinking. The data that GPT is being fed is just so massive. I can ask anything to it. For example, uh, okay, so as of yesterday, we were working on creating an application around healthcare. I gave it a simple prompt. I want to design a healthcare application. What are the primary features this application should have? It literally gave me so many options. Our primary assignment yesterday, not really an assignment, but something that we were working on, was creating a sign up flow for a healthcare application. And we had not even thought about going inside and creating some features for it, but it just kind of gave me all of this result: user authentication and profiles, appointment scheduling, telemedicine, video consultations, health records, medication reminders, symptom checker, health education and resources, emergency service integrations, health tracking, so many more. Language support. I mean, it is up to us how we take advantage of the tools that AI has to offer. We don't really need to limit ourselves to the generic modes of research anymore. For example, the one of the projects that I'm working on, the target audience is Saudi Arabia based, and I don't really have access to that clientele, to that user base, and I still need to create a product around it. What do? I ask ChatGPT some basic questions. Do users prefer mobile or laptops to browse websites in Saudi Arabia? It's gonna give me data around this and then so much more. If I need to research something, tell me about UI UX trends in 2024. Let me just quickly input this. Let's see what it comes back with. Minimalism and simplified design, dark mode, personalized user experience, augmented reality and virtual reality, voice user interfaces. Definitely, I have read multiple articles around this and dark mode. Accessible design, of course, 3D graphics and illustrations. This is not hidden from anybody. 3D graphics are ruling the world right now. If we have seen the new update of the Swiggy app, they have introduced all of this. And of course, interactions in the application, and it's elevated the design altogether. Gesture based navigation and interaction, of course. So I don't really need to go and read articles. Of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, you definitely should, to be more aware and kind of understand what each and every designer out there is thinking. Again, it is all about staying in the community, being in touch with what other designers are doing. We don't need to rely on just AI. We also need to, of course, be in touch with our own community. But again, using GPT and Gemini to kind of conduct researches, validating the insights that we found. This is what I'm thinking. Am I right to think that? Is there something I could be doing better? All of these questions can now be answered through ChatGPT and Gemini. Apart from this, Notion, of course. Notion has a feature of brainstorming ideas. For example, if I, again, because healthcare was the primary agenda of our working session yesterday, I asked the Notion feature, brainstorming feature, how to design a healthcare application. Again, it gave me feature suggestions that these are the things that you can add. Maybe you can add one-on-one consultations with the doctors and so much more, of course. So these two are your research tools. You don't need to go beyond this. If you do, more power to you. You are definitely doing so much more. You definitely need to keep on, of course, conducting your own research. But then again, we are not trying to fight with AI. We are trying to merge with AI. We are trying to exploit whatever it has to offer. And then, of course, at the end of the day, become better designers. And last but not the least, Midjourney, Dolly, and Adobe Firefly. If I look up Midjourney creatives, what are people making? I mean, this is just so good to look at. Imagine if I created something like this for a company, a paint company, and I'm creating an application around it, and I add creatives like this. It's just gonna be elevating my design multifolds, right? And it does not take a lot of prompts to kind of create any sort of art on these tools. Some are paid, some, because Adobe Firefly is, I think, in its beta version. I think it just launched. I haven't personally used it, but I know people who have, and they're just absolutely loving it. Even the Photoshop feature that they have, that we, through the marquee tool, we select any particular area and a empty space around any particular image. For example, if this is my image and I select this empty area and I give a prompt to kind of, maybe extend or build something on top of this image, it will do that. and it will give you options around it. So definitely, how do we use Midjourney and tools like this in our interface designing? Again, generating creatives to support your interface. It is very difficult at times to kind of find resources or illustrations that go alongside with the kind of creative or interface that we are trying to make. And this is where, these tools come in handy. They kind of reduce that research time to a minimum. I'm gonna head to the chat box. Even Canva has it now. Yep, yep. Okay. Guys, I'll share the Figma link with you at the end of the session so that there are not a lot of cursors as we navigate through the file. Okay. Is it good to learn Figma or no code tools like website development? Yes, it definitely is. If you are trying to get into the field of designing, or if you are a technology buff or a developer who wants to get a better understanding of how design works, I think Figma is for anybody and everybody. It is definitely good to have a working knowledge of how the tool behaves, what its usability is, not just to create interfaces, but also to understand how you can create tasks as simple as a presentation. I mean, of course, everybody needs to create their CVs and portfolios. So, in order to create, I understand that there are thousands of portals who have impressive templates and it is easier to understand. But at the end of the day, if you want to create something from scratch, if you want to customize it, isn't it better to do it yourself? Of course, with the help of AI. Creativity can't be replaced by AI. Yes, you're right. Okay, I think, is Figma better than Adobe XD? Yes, it is. We covered it in yesterday's session. How long will it take to get better in Figma for a second year student? It will take a month, spending 2 hours daily on Figma and really using it, not just going through the Figma community, but trying to create one interface a day, be it application, be it website. Just what you can start with is you look at a design. For example, try to picture the checkout page of Myntra. Can you, without looking at the application, can you tell me what all can you recall from the checkout page of Myntra? Can people just quickly start commenting in the chat box? What can you remember from the checkout page of Myntra application? Guys, hurry up. Roadmap of a UI UX designer to land a job. I think this is something that we can cover in tomorrow's session. This is a good point. I will definitely note it down. Thank you so much. Do I need to go for graphics designing if I want to become a designer? I mean, depends on what sort of designer do you want to be. Do you want to be a graphics designer, a motion designer, UI designer, UX designer? Of course. So people have started commenting what all they can recall from the Myntra checkout page. So share button, placing an order, New trends, payment UPI, debit card, credit card, payment options. Yes, yes. Yes, we will get to how to connect Canva with Figma using plugins. Yes, we will get to it. We are in the middle of something else. I will get to it. Is there any roadmap? Yes, we will definitely discuss the roadmap or the entire user journey of how to land a job in the field of UI UX. We will get to it tomorrow. Okay, okay. So basically, the agenda behind asking whether you remember what is in the Myntra applications checkout page is to kind of understand what the recall value of the application has been, and how much can we remember from what there is. So when we talk about Myntra application, we know that there is, of course, a header with a back arrow. Apart from this, I know that there are some steps in which I'm on step number 1, there is a step number 2, and then there is a step number 3. This is filled right now because this is the step that I'm on right. Yeah. Apart from this, I know that there are some products, their listings, a title, the customization, if maybe the size of the product there, maybe S, L, whatever there is. And of course, I can't really remember where they put the pricing, but I'm assuming it was something over here, a checkbox on top, a button to delete it or move it to wish list, right? And then there is a very fine separator in the middle of the listing. Then I have my section separator, which kind of helps me understand that a new section has started. Then I know that there is an option to apply coupons. I can go to a list of coupons through a different page. Then I have an option. All right, this helps me remember that there is a section over here to kind of set my address. It is preset, but I can always change it. Then comes my delivery details. I think maybe it is alongside all the products. What is the delivery time like? And then I have my payment details and a primary button to continue. Basically, this is what a generic page for an e-commerce portal looks like, right? So again, when I said that you need to work on one design every day to kind of understand how designing is actually done, try to remember any portal, any application, any system that you can remember as much about. Try to recreate it. Try to kind of write down or create a low fidelity wireframe, a pen paper wireframe, to understand what all can you remember from this, and then go to the actual application to kind of match what information did you miss. And once you're set with the wireframe that you've created, convert this into UI. You don't need to create components, you don't need to use auto layout, you don't need to create a color library for all of this. You just need to translate all of this into interface. You need to add colors to it, you need to add typography to it, and then maybe you come up with the end result. And then you need to, if you want to, you need to validate all of this that you've created with an end user. It could be your friend, it could be a sibling, it could be a parent. You kind of need to help them validate what you've made. They will surprise you at the end by telling you that you missed some very crucial information. It is possible that, of course, because this is your first time recreating something from memory, you don't need to incorporate everything that Myntra has done. You need to just recreate everything as per your memory, whatever that you remember. And then you need to, again, as you get the feedback on it, you need to understand what the gaps were, fill those gaps in the second iteration. This is how it works in corporates. This is how you work when we work on a project in the official setup, right? Okay. Similar products, of course. Yeah. Applications like Blinkit and even Amazon. Right before I check out, Amazon Fresh gives me an entire page of suggested products right before I go to checkout. So, of course, this is another way to keep the user engaged more and more into the designs that into buying the products that we are seeing. Okay, I think this is about it for our research part. I wanted to give you guys a brief about what auto layout is. I have added. So again, guys, I would definitely suggest all of you to, again, I will share the link to this file, to go through the YouTube videos that are created by Figma, their official account, anything and everything that you need information on. For example, I need to know more about auto layout. They have so many videos about it based on the time that you are willing to give to it. If I go here, it not only lets me understand what this feature auto layout is, but at the same time, if I go to Figma community and I look for auto layout, they have so many files, again, created by the official Figma account. These files are called playgrounds. So, what they do is they basically write down everything step by step. I'm going to just quickly take you through some files for some slides for auto layout to kind of help you understand. I wanted to create something of my own, but I mean, it is definitely better to learn from Don Norman than Twinkle, right? So the people who are responsible behind creating a feature as amazing as auto layout, why not just directly refer to those people? I'm just the middleman over here trying to understand, trying to bridge the gap between what they have done and how you will be using it. Okay, so let's get started. I will head to the comment section one last time just to understand if you have any questions before we get into the working part of the session. Does anybody have any questions about what we've discussed so far? In the second leg of this session, we will be discussing auto layout, components, variants, and a bit about design libraries. Right, Figma file into code. Yes, of course. There is a dev mode that is available. If I click on this, if I click on any portion of any component, for example, if I'm creating something over here, just a second, I create a button, then I add some text, and I go to the dev mode, which again is in a beta phase. I get all the properties, the font weight, the size, line height. All of this is shown to me along with the code. This is my font family. So again, another reason why people who are familiar with technology, it is definitely gonna level up your skill set if you use Figma. Okay. Difference between UI and UX. Explain in simple terms. Okay. I used a line yesterday. UI is how good a car looks. And UX is how good it makes you feel when you're driving that car. I hope this answers your question. And if not, I think you can refer to the previous session. We talked a lot about it. Uh, it needs to be a paid one. Yes, unfortunately, Figma has moved their dev mode to a paid plan for now. Okay, great. I think we can move on to the auto layout part of the session. Right. So, what is auto layout? Okay, that is a very heavy question. What is auto layout? As the name suggests, auto layout, automatically creating a layout for you. If I am in a hurry and I want to stack all these boxes, what do I do? Previously, I myself was going through these spacing tools to kind of fix all of this. But what I do now, if I go through this, is that I select all these boxes, I click on Shift A, and wait, so Figma has launched a wrap tool, but what I initially did was Shift A, and all of this is aligned. So basically, it not only creates a structure for me, it gives me the option to kind of adjust so much more. So if I had not applied auto layout to this and I was trying to decrease the gap, not from here, but if I try to resize them, it would reduce the width of these boxes. But what I can do now is I can set the limits to what the resizing is. I can adjust the gaps between them. It can be custom or again. So, okay, I think before I get into, I think I'm trying to get ahead of myself. I think I'll just take you step by step. So again, it is a little difficult to explain how each function of auto layout works, is why in order to break it down for this session, I refer to this playbook. And yeah, okay, let's start with this. For example, adjustments on the canvas, we create 4 or 3 buttons. Now I added auto layout to it by clicking Shift A. Again, guys, I would urge you all to refer to the shortcuts because life becomes so much easier when we are using shortcuts when we are dealing with auto layout. So I added auto layout to it. And as you can see that it gives me options to manage my padding from here. If I want to, if this container that I have created by adding auto layout to these 3 components, what I can do is I can adjust the padding from all sides. I add 20 from the left side, 20 from right, 10 from top, and 10 from bottom. Now you can very clearly see that this is what my structure is now. If I create a purple box behind it, I can very clearly see that this is the space of my new frame. This is the margin that has been given to it, right? I can adjust it as I want, and I can create margins around it. Okay. Now, how do we add children to auto layout? Basically, it's nothing but copying the elements that we have over here. For example, if I have 4 different layouts over here, 3 different layouts, I want to replicate any of them. Let's not use the traditional control C, control V. We can just go control or command D and it duplicates it. So as you can see, it is going a little outside the frame. Why is that? Because I have mentioned it over here that the gap between the elements, the boxes that I've created, has to be 49. If I click on auto, it will let me resize it again in the original format. For example, before I had duplicated the blue box, if I had set the gap between the boxes as auto, it would not have increased the width of the box of the primary container that I've created. Okay, let's move on to another. I think this is kind of the same. Let me bring this back. I will change the color for this to a shade of green. Okay, so now we talk about the alignment of the frame. So as you can see, when I created a frame, if I talk about this, let me just change the color for this. These are 4 layers right now. If I click Shift A, or I can just add auto layout from this side, or from here, right click, add auto layout. These are my options. I click on any of them. The icon of the frame changes. It is an identifier that these elements are now grouped into auto layout. Okay, now I need to ensure that whatever I am creating over here has some alignment to it. Maybe it's horizontally laid out. Maybe I want it to be vertical. What do? I click on vertical. Now you might be wondering, why is the container's width still 255? Why did it not change when I moved the orientation from going horizontally to vertically? Is because I had created it in such a way that I had made sure that the width of the box is fixed. Auto layout is all about setting the limitations so that the work that you do from that point onwards goes smoothly. It does not affect your productivity. Basically, it might seem like you are making a lot of hassles, a lot of restrictions in the first design. And is it really worth it? Yes, it is. And how, we will again address that in the section. So if I click on hug content again, because of the margins that I have restricted for the frame for the 4 boxes, clicking on hug content kind of shrinks the whole box to kind of meet these restrictions that I had added. Again, if I want to move it back to horizontal layout, it does that. Now, what will happen if I click on fixed height, which is this part? What happens if I make it go vertical again? The frame kind of stays at the height of 59. Now, in order to kind of make it go all the way down, I don't need to do this because again, I have set a margin from top and bottom. What you can do is click on the line and it kind of meets the requirement of 10 pixels from here. Again, to show you, we click on this corner line of the frame, again the frame that I have selected. I double click on this and it goes to its original shape, and the property from here changes from fixed height to hug content, right? So there are so many shortcuts when it comes to auto layout and just Figma in general. So again, feel free to go through the files when you do your own research. I'm just gonna quickly head to the comment section. Okay. Uh, Auto layout means it will automatically set all the designs to any frame or the size of frame. It will rearrange the design perfectly to the frame dimensions. Yes, yes. Okay. Can we create a graphic design with Figma tool? Of course, you can. There is no limitation to what Figma can do. It can even create some minor level of motion graphics. So definitely, Figma can. I'm not trying to sell you guys Figma, but I'm definitely gonna advocate for it very strongly. Okay, moving on. I hope this section is clear to you all. Again, another working file. So when you go to files like created by Figma, Figma Auto Layout, Figma Components, files like these, all of this is just again taken from the repository that Figma provides, and there are slides where you can just actually try it out. You can see how this is working. For example, they've scattered these buttons for me. If I click on Shift A, again auto layout has been applied based on what the button sizes are, what the element sizes are. It kind of gives me a brief about what the vertical spacing ideally can be. Again, it is on me to change it, increase it, decrease it, if not keep it at all. All of this is on me, right? So adding auto layout to things as simple elements, boxes is clear. Now let's try to add auto layout to a button. How do I do that? Firstly, I write a text. I need to ensure that whatever dimensions that I want this text in is set. If you are a beginner, I would suggest for line height, you go with auto. I enter. This is so the font by default, the system font for Figma is Enter. It is one of the most amazing fonts there are. It is very simple, it is very minimal, clean. So I suggest that you start with that. I make sure that there is no letter spacing in this. And what I do next is I click Shift A on this text, around this text. My text size is 24. It might be a little too big for an application, and maybe even for websites. So what I want to do is go for something that is around 18. A little, still a little too big for applications, but ideal for websites. And as mentioned in the last session, that for a button in application, the ideal size is close to 44, the height of the button. If I'm talking about this button, the height of this button should be around 44. Again, subjective. You need to do your own research. You need to make up your own mind around it. But this is what my 2 cents are. So now I have added auto layout to this particular text. How do I create this text with an invisible line around it into a button? What do I do with it? So I start stretching this button. If I want the button to be of width 160 and the height is 42, but maybe I want it to be 44, I add that. Now what I do next is I go to fill, I select a color that resonates with the brand that I am creating the product for. Maybe it's this shade. And I select my text. I need to ensure that the readability for this particular combination is ideal. So I go to color contrast again. I now realize that, okay, it is not detecting it in auto layout, which is okay. I just need to test this out once before I start creating my library. So it is important to not miss out on this step because your whole brand is built around it. Of course, this makes perfect sense. This is 9.20 contrast ratio. It is passing with flying colors. So I'm gonna head back to this. I'm gonna now check that if my text, if the text that I have written over here is centrally aligned with the button or not. How do I manage that? I manage it with these controls. I need to ensure that if I'm using a button, it has to be centrally aligned, right? If I was talking about some other element, for example, a card with the maybe this is an image and I want the button to be over here. Maybe not just a text, but a primary and secondary button with an icon around it. If I go to this, Let me just quickly add an icon for this info. Okay, just a second. Let me see if I got this right. I need an info icon. I add this icon. Again, guys, I chose this particular icon because I already had it in my laptop. It can be anything. And how did I export this icon? I clicked on Command Shift K, Control Shift K if you're using a Windows laptop. So again, refer to the shortcuts. They will make your life so much easier. So I adjust the spacing between the icon and the text that I'm using. Okay. So how did I resize this icon? Because the original size was quite big. How did I do that? I clicked on the icon, I clicked on the letter K on my keyboard, and then I resized it. I don't need to hold shift or anything, I don't need to hold any other key. The button K kind of takes care of all of that for me. And again, because this icon has a stroke, so I don't even need to worry about whether during resizing I will have to edit the stroke value or not. The feature in Figma, kind of the scaling feature is what it's called, takes care of all of that for me. So again, we were initially deciding to put the text centrally aligned with the button, the background, the frame that we've created. But right now, I am not really looking forward to creating the button in a centrally aligned format with the button, with the base, basically because now I have one more asset to take care of in the button itself. It can be placed however I want it to. Again, depends on the mode or the use case that I'm catering to. If this said next, it makes sense to have the next icon over here and not over here, right? I hope you guys agree with this. But in case of something like this, I might need to place the button on the right side again. But at the same time, if you are using icons in your library, in the designs that you're using, you need to be consistent with the placing. Either it has to be on the right side, all the icons that you're using are supposed to be on the right side or the left side, or you don't use icons at all. It is all about creating harmony for the user. It is all about training the user to kind of look forward to kind of understand what is going to happen on the next page. If I have icons in some buttons and I don't in others, I might confuse the user because now they are relying on textual information as well as virtual information, virtual cues. They might, be looking forward to, for example, if I my next CTA, again call to action, is supposed to be proceed, then if I'm using icons, it is mandatory for me to use an icon in the next button as well. Okay, how do I add icons into buttons? I select the text, I select the icon. Again, the size has to be consistent with what I've been creating. For example, this button was supposed to be 44. Now, so is this one. What I do next is I select my text, I select my icon, I press Shift A to add auto layout. Now, do you think it's a good idea to add auto over here, or should I specify the gap between the button, the text, and the icon? I want you guys to quickly kind of validate this thought for me. Should I keep the gap between the info icon and the info text as 10, or should I put it on auto? Okay, okay. It has to be 10. It has to be fixed because no matter, again, the text has to be right aligned, and I kind of need to ensure that this gap does not get hampered regardless of whatever content that I'm writing. This gap should be maintained. I don't want the text to at some point get closer to the icon. I need to maintain this space, this breathing space between the two elements to kind of ensure that both have clear visibility. Okay, now that we have that cleared, I have an auto layout that is already acting on the text along with the icon. What I'm gonna do next is select the layer behind it. I already have selected my primary frame, in which is text plus icon. What I'm gonna do next is press shift and select the layer behind it as well, and click on shift A. I have now added auto layout to this whole piece. Now what I'm gonna do is set the margins. So set the paddings. I want the gap to be 20 from the sides and 10 or maybe 12 from top. So now I see that if I've added this margin 12 from top and bottom, I now see that the button size has increased. So what I'm going to do is reduce it to 9 so that it meets the requirement for my button preferences, which is 44 in this case. Again, not universal, something that I prefer personally. You are more than welcome to make your own way in this. That is perfectly okay. Now this button looks a little old school. How about we kind of liven it up a little bit? What do we do next is add border radius to it. Corner radius, sorry, not border radius, corner radius to it. 10 seems neither here nor there. I'm gonna just add 100 to it so that it has a curved edge. But now this button looks a little too small for me to be able to tap on it properly. And what if in the future this text is longer than info? What if this is now information? This kind of information. It kind of throws my icon right out of my frame and I can't really see anything now. What do I do in that case? I select my primary frame, which is a parent of the text and icon and the background. I go over here. I centrally align the information. Oops, sorry, I need to create these restrictions for the primary layer first. I need to go and centrally align the text and icon. It was left aligned before. Once I've done this, now I kind of need to stretch out the frame to again meet the requirement. My initial requirement was 160. And now I kind of feel that maybe this text size with close to 8 9 characters, maybe this button size is not ideal for something like this. This is where UX writing comes in. Based on the space that we are provided, we need to add the words in such a way that it does not hamper the design. But at the same time, it is conveying the information to the user, it is getting the message across. So, at the same time, what I do is I keep it info again. Because again, info is something that is universally understood as a short form for information. Again, this is just an example. You guys can create your own versions for it. You guys can create your own approaches to this, because as I've been saying over and over again, design is highly subjective. What is working for me might not work for you, but at the end of the day, as designers, we need to be able to reach to the masses. Okay, this is done. Now, one other aspect of designing something as small as a button in an interface is that I need to set some guidelines. What if the next designer who comes onto this file kind of wants to change the designs up a little bit? And that person is maybe if I have kept the width at 180, maybe they want to kind of, shrink it down to 128. How do I make sure that that is not the case, that is not happening? What I need to do is I need to go to the width, add minimum width, so that I ensure that this button does not go below 160. This is where, if you can see the red line, it's a very fine line. It is not letting me change the size of the button less than 160. So this is a guideline that I have set as a designer, as the person who is creating this library, this entire system that will be catering to any product idea. I am setting my first guideline over here, that this is the button, this is the color palette that I'm using, this is the corner radius, this is the auto layout, this is the alignment that I have added through all of these features, and this is the minimum button height that I am setting for my button, for my half width button. All right, I hope this is clear to everybody. Are there any questions around creating a button using auto layout? Again, auto layout is different from components, so I just wanted to understand if everybody got this. Okay, so it does not usually take as long to create a button, because I've been walking you through all the features that you might want to use when it comes to creating something as simple as buttons. So you need to be aware of all these features. Again, think of it as like an investment. When we start investing in mutual funds, or we start in SIP or anything, the initial growth is a little slow, right? We need to be a little patient with the returns. And once we are patient, once enough time has passed, we do end up seeing good results. And so I think, yeah, learning a new skill is something that is very similar to this. You might not see the results, you might not be able to create a button in less than 1 minute today, but if you keep at it, if you keep practicing, I'm telling you, it's not very difficult to create a whole design library, something as extensive as what I had mentioned before, Nucleus UI kit. They have such a vast library, and I'm telling you, it's not going to take you more than 2 days to kind of create every component that is used in order to create an application. Think of an application as extensive as Amazon or Uber. So with the help of auto layout and components, you will be able to create all of this very, very quickly. Okay, let's move on. Now we kind of come to, I think we've covered hugging content, fixed heights, filling containers, all of this is done. Adding minimum height and width, all of this is done. Uh, right, let's move on to spacing and padding is also done. Left align, bottom align, using the space on this section is also covered. Right. So what we need to think of, what we need to learn now is absolute position. Okay, this is an interesting segment in auto layout that we can cover today. So I'm just gonna add a color to my frame so that it is distinguished from the back. If I try to add anything else in this particular section, just a second. If I try to add this tiny little circle somewhere in this auto layout, it won't really let me without having it follow the same properties for the rest of the elements. But I need this red circle to kind of be on top of this yellow box. What do I do in that case? And this is an exception. I do not want this to be in the library. I do not want, for example, if we assume that this yellow square is an icon and notification icon, and I want this to be on top of it, on top of the bell icon, somewhere on the right side. But this is a status. This is not really the main icon. What do I do in that case? I click here, which is absolute position. It kind of frees the element to go wherever I want in the frame without having it follow the rules and regulations that I have set for the rest of the four components elements, right? As you can see, the icon has changed for this particular element. I now know that it is an absolute component. It has an absolute positioning, right? Okay, so I think this is all about auto layout. Let's quickly move on to creating components. And I think in tomorrow's section, we can finish up the design that we were working on once you guys have practiced. I think so, because there is no set assignment. I would strongly suggest that you guys learn a bit more about auto layout and components. Again, I will share the files link in the Notion document that is attached in here. Uh, it's yes, full link. I will just add the link to my file in this link. You can please check it from here. So, okay, quickly heading to creating components. Let me just bring back the button, the very nicely designed button I had made. I will add it over here. For presentation purposes, I'm gonna create a copy of this and I'm gonna remove the icon from this. So as you can see, as soon as I remove the icon from this particular button, the size changed. It is 40 now. But if I go to the previous frame, it is 44. Why is that? Because the text that I had the height of 22 and the icon that I added was of height 26. So in order to make sure that there is no size variation, I need to make sure that the text height and the icon height, whatever elements that I'm adding, they match. They cannot be too far off from each other, because at the end of the day, it will create discrepancy in my design system. And because design system, the whole purpose of creating a design system is so that we don't have to create the same component over and over again. If you create a mistake in the first step, it will just keep on repeating. Every screen that you use this button on will have a flawed design element to it. So in order to make sure that we are not making this mistake, please make sure that the assets that you're using are of the right size and colors. Okay, so what we're gonna do over here is I have already kind of created uh, wait, this. Now I need to go to this file because previously it was an auto layout between text and icon. Right now I just have my text. So I'm gonna break this auto layout, the first level, by clicking on Command Shift G, which is also the shortcut for ungrouping. And if you're using Windows, it's Control Shift G. So please keep that in mind. Now I want to create a component around it. I have made sure that the margins, the padding, all of that is done. I have my minimum height, which is 160. What I'm going to do now is I'm gonna select this frame and I'm gonna click on Alt Control K, and for Mac, Option Command K. I created my first component. What I need to do here is create a layer name. When we are creating components, it is very, very, very important to name your layers properly. I understand, being designers, we are used to grouping them in so many levels. We just keep on doing it, but components behave differently. It is advised, it is very strongly advised to name your layers properly. I'm gonna write down primary button. Now, another shortcut for creating auto layout or adding auto layout, sorry, component, is from the top. Let me just show you quickly. This is text. I place it over here. I align it with the box and I add auto layout to it. And then I can click on create component or create component. All of these shortcuts, it is Again, strongly advise that you go through the shortcuts and kind of understand what feature lies where. It will save a lot of time. Right, so once I've done this, I now want to create a couple of variations for this. It is, so there are types of, three types of components. And actually, let me just take you through the definition rather than trying to give it my own flair. I do not want to, again, pass on incorrect or half-baked information. A component. A component is a reusable design element. It can be as simple as a rectangle or as complex as a navigation bar, right? Instances. An instance is when you use the button in your design. It's not the main component, but a copy of it. When you update the master, all instances will update. Now, I had this button, right? I had this button as my primary component. I created a replica of it. It's an instance. What does that mean? It means whatever change I am making to my primary button, it will be reflected in my instance. Okay, instance follows the primary component to the dot. And then there are variants. If you need a hover state or a press state, these states will be considered variants of your main default component. Again, in the file, I have added the Figma documents, which kind of explain what components are, what variants are, how do we manage that. We can cover all of these in depth in the tomorrow's session. I have also added some screenshots on what you can do to an instance and variants. What are the limitations that, kind of entail with all of this. There are some links to the Figma playground file and the tutorial files to these. Coming back, this is my instance. I'm gonna just quickly label it INSTANCE. This is my instance. This is my component. Now I need to learn how to create variables. What I do is I select my primary component. I go back to the top nav. This button, which was initially to create component, has now changed to add variant because I am, keep in mind, I have selected my primary component. Okay, I click on this. So you can see that suddenly the layout has changed. There is this dashed line that is formed around the two buttons. This is my default, and the second one is my variant 2, as you can see from the file. What I need to do in this case is change the name of the variant that I have made. I want this button to act as my on hover button. Now, in order to make this look different, so isn't it a lot better for portals when they have more and more interactions, gestures that we can interact with? For example, if I am hovering on a button, if it changes colors, isn't it just like, it just feels that a lot of effort has gone into creating that design, right? So I'm gonna do a little bit of that. I'm gonna just add some design element to it so that it looks different. So this is my on hover state. Okay, now I want to add one more variant to it, which is my disabled state. So what does a disabled state look like? It looks a little grayed out. The text on top of it, basically. So one more shortcut that I want you guys to remember is whenever I am in a multiple level of grouping, I don't need to kind of click to reach the file that I want to become active. I can just hold on to command or control and directly move my cursor to it and tap. I'm there. So in case I want to change this particular text to make it look a little disabled, I'm gonna do something like this. Okay, so these are my three states for the buttons. I started with creating a primary button. I moved to my on hover state. and then I move to my disabled state, right? Now, why did I do this? Why can't I just like create 3 components and call from the library when I'm on the go, when I'm designing my library? Let me show you. This is a simpler way to do it because let me just explain it. So, when we are creating a library, it all starts from an idea. From that idea, we go to multiple levels. One of them is UI. From UI, we kind of create user personas 1, 2, 3, 4. From those personas, we come to this conclusion that this is what the need of the hour is. And then we start working on our UI kit. When we go to the UI kit, there are just so many elements. Isn't it better to kind of have a standard grouping for buttons, for icons, for typography? So basically, this categorization is where this comes in. Okay, now how did we do this? Why did we do this? There is an answer for everything. This was my default state, this was my on hover state, this was my disabled state. Now I created a copy of this. How can I access the copy? Do I need to go to my primary file where I have placed my primary button? No, you don't need to go there. You can just click on assets and you will see all the assets, all the components that you've added in your library over here. They can be icons, they can be, so these are the elements that I was working on yesterday. This is the icon file that I had imported from somebody else, and these are the components that I had created today. So I can just quickly drag and drop all of this. This is all ready for me to be found with the search bar that I want to use. All of this is just ready made. I click on this. This is my primary button. The property type is default. If I want to change it to on hover, I do that. If I want to change it to disabled, I do that. Right? Doesn't it save a lot of time than going to the file, locating my primary button, and then changing it? So this is what components and variants are. I hope this is clear to everybody. Any other questions for today's session? Guys, I think we are done with the time. I hope this session made sense to you. I hope you got to learn something new. I will go through the questions and see if I have missed anything and be sure to address it in tomorrow's session. I hope to see you guys there. Just a reminder, tomorrow is the last leg of our 3-day boot camp. And we will be discussing creating libraries and prototyping, a brief about prototyping, and basically how to land jobs in the world of UI UX. Thank you, everybody. It was great interacting with you. Thank you so much.